Hi, everybody. We only have a couple people on today, and that's totally fine. But we'll just give it a few minutes before we dip into some instruction. So what we've been kind of talking about is opening up Thursdays to a more intimate Q&A type of session, so that along with some practices, that the Thursday afternoon gathering doesn't feel, it feels more like connection and community driven, and your opportunity to kind of make some requests or bring anything into the space for discussion. So I'd like to kind of just open that up now while we kind of pause to see if we have more folks join in. So feel free to unmute yourself for a few minutes, and you can turn your camera on if you're comfortable, and get your voices out into this virtual space to share some information. Zoom is interesting, isn't it? It's this new form of trying to connect and not feeling super comfortable. So I understand that too. Okay, well, we'll just give it a few minutes and get started. I will share a funny story with all of you. What I'm noticing is that we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and our dogs are a German Shepherd named Boone and a Bernese Mountain Dog named Summit. And what I've noticed is that the dogs are feeling like they have more control than normal. So especially the Bernese Mountain Dog seems just a little bit pushy with what his needs and wants and desires. So I'm curious to see if any of you are noticing some shifts with pets that are, it's almost like now trapped here. So anyway, I was observing that today, noticing how their personalities are shifting a bit. And things are pretty overwhelming. So I've been trying to stay on a routine and really pushing myself in that direction. But also noticing that I'm definitely needing more space in my day than normal. So I've been reading a lot of articles about folks sharing that they really need to slow down, and some of these scheduled gatherings and calls and activities and productivity and this sort of thing, like forcing ourselves into this schedule right now, doesn't really feel natural. And I agree. I think it's good to have some sort of rhythm to the day, but I also feel like not listening in and pushing ourselves beyond our capacities right now is really dangerous. So I also wanted to just honor that, just that we need this downtime. This time together shouldn't feel stressful. It should just feel nourishing. And so that's what we're trying to create here. So somebody shared that her sister-in-law, when I guess my sister-in-law asked if one can balance a dog's chakras. Her dog was freaking out too, huh? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Although I do have a friend who it has a medium that works on dogs. So maybe we could put you in touch with her, Paula, and through our friend Tracy, our mutual friend Tracy. Okay, awesome. So we have more folks joining in now. What I think we'll do is go ahead and get it started. We may have more people folding in, and that's great. And if not, That's okay too. Let's get started with a meditation together. So I'm just going to set our timer. We're going to work with a 10-minute meditation to get things started today. For those of you that are new to meditation, I think you'll be surprised with how nourishing 10 minutes can feel. Um, Sometimes when beginners to the practice hear that we're working with a 10-minute time frame, it could feel really overwhelming. So I don't want you to feel that way. If at any point you do, just you're welcome to just open your eyes and observe, or just sit and observe the whole thing and try it later. So again, these all of these practices that we're offering are suggestions. Um, they're really personal practices that we lean into, daily practices that we lean into. And so there's enormous trust there that these practices are very supportive right now. Okay. So find a comfortable seat, whether you're sitting on a cushion or a chair. That's up to you, or you could certainly just stand if that feels better right now, especially if you feel a little sluggish, if your energy is kind of dipping down in the afternoon. Sometimes it's really helpful just to stand up so that we could get energy moving and supporting the system more. All right, so in just a moment, you'll hear a bell, which will drop, which these tones or bells are used to just pull us out of ordinary life and drop us right into this present moment inside our bodies and in this inner landscape that we're getting to know. So you can close your eyes, or you could just simply set your gaze forward and down and just kind of soften your gaze in one point. And just noticing how those tones have dissolved and settled. And just opening your awareness to the space you're in, the space that we're sharing virtually, just noticing there's a field here that we've created. And I'd like to encourage each of you to really open the sense door of the ears. So just bring all of the attention into the ears, into the sense of hearing. And see if you could listen for the furthest sound away from you right now. What is that? So imagine just stretching this sense door open. And you might begin to notice now that there's many faraway sounds outside and beyond these surroundings, these enclosures, our homes. And notice if you can feel into the layers there of sound. And notice any distractions that come in and pull you away from hearing, from listening. And gently return back. Try to stay in the senses right now, specifically in that sense of sound, of hearing. And staying with these sounds on the outside, imagine now just getting closer. So noticing what sounds from the outside are closer than these faraway sounds. So just pulling your awareness in. Imagine just wrapping this sense around your home. What sounds are right there. And noticing that field, and encouraging it to now be a backdrop, those outside sounds just forming this backdrop. And now pulling your attention closer into your personal space, your home, inside your walls. And notice the sounds of life happening around you, even if they're very subtle. Soften your ears, soften your jaw, and stay open. And now, without boundaries to the sense door of hearing, open to life happening around you, both inside the walls and outside and beyond, far away. Just kind of opening it up, welcoming it in. And imagine just resting at center, the center of all of the sounds happening around you. attuning to the space between the sounds, these layers, and the impermanence of different sounds rising and falling into this field of inquiry. Now gently bring your attention into your body. Softening or relaxing this method in the senses and returning back into your seat. Noticing the parts of your body that are touching the ground. Notice the quality of your breath right now. And inviting the sound of the bells to pull us back into this present moment together. And as that sound dissolves, just dropping the chin down, taking a moment, opening your eyes, and coming back into the space now together. Okay, good. How are you guys feeling? Good. So that practice of just landing softly in the senses is very supportive, especially if you feel a lot of anxiety kind of surfacing. It could just land us into our body through the senses. So just arriving in to these sense doors is very supportive. And of course, we could use any of the senses, and we do, and we'll kind of play with that as we move along. Doing some walking meditations outside, just slowing it down and really opening to your senses in that experience is very grounding. So it's a method that we can use again and again. We can play with it by perhaps even just attending to 5 different things we could see, 4 different things we could hear, 3 different things we could touch, kind of going down that list. And you could adjust through the senses as you feel it's supportive. So I find that especially in the spring, with new life kind of happening around us and the birds coming back. I'm in the Northeast. I'm assuming most of you are too, although I know we have folks in Europe here on the call as well. Just the birds coming back into the field, we could really work with those sounds. Into the summer, I like to do this meditation at night because I live in the country and there's lots of sounds of frogs and different night life happening outside my window. So in a city, it's also can be really supportive. Just again, opening the window, feeling the breeze against your skin, noticing all the sounds of life happening out there and the changing kind of lighting as it comes into the field. So just softly landing there. That's the key, is not holding on too tight while you're having those experiences. And of course, noticing what you'll notice as you continue to work with the senses, especially this sense of hearing, when sharp sounds enter, because they will, undoubtedly, you'll notice how disruptive sound could be to a relaxed system. And you'll notice the vibration that's stirred up in the physical form. And what I've noticed after practicing this for some time is that I'm much more careful with how much sound I allow in the field of our home, especially from like the television or the news cycle, because we really get we're conditioned to that, and we don't recognize, or we're not able to notice how much that news stream, this, especially with the doom and gloom that we're hearing, there's not really any good news happening. So we kind of get desensitized in a way to how that's affecting the system. And these practices kind of shine the light of awareness into that. So then we're able to better manage how much we're allowing in, because I've noticed that that's felt a little out of control for me lately, just because of I'm curious and worried and feeling overwhelmed and like I need to keep up. And so I've been really trying to manage that. And I'm not doing it perfectly, but I know that when I am more careful with how much noise I'm inviting in, that I feel better. If I'm managing that in a little bit, if I'm just, dropping it down a bit. So it's something that could be really helpful. And this practice can help attune you to what or how that's affecting your system. Because that's really what we're working on, especially right now, is just, getting to know this inner landscape, navigating that from a really clear view, and then adjusting things as we need to. So with that being said, I wanted to talk more about stress in the body today, and some practices, some really short practices, micro practices that you could do at any time throughout the day to just help calm the system. And there's a few that I've been really working with a lot. So the first one, and we worked with the Hara a little bit on Tuesday. So this incorporates some of that work, and it's also coming out of Japanese energy work, the same energy work that we find from Hara practices. And these are just energy holds, and it's almost like a doorway into the central nervous system. So that's what you could think of it as is a hack into the central nervous system, just to calm things down and pull us out of that stress response in the limbic part of the brain. So I'd like all of you to take your right hand and just place it over your forehead, and really just like wrap it on your forehead. So I want you to really feel your palm and your thumbs and your fingers. And then just take your left hand and place it on your heart. And really open your hand and let it feel heavy. And you could close your eyes. And encourage your weight to really drop into your seat. However you're sitting is fine. Just really land. And deepen your breath. So really opening into the inhale and expanding. And then just empty the exhale out. And what's most important here is just to trust how you're breathing right now. So don't follow my lead. Just really trust what feels right for you. And just a few more breaths here, and just notice how the system's responding. Notice that there's support right here in this hold. And after this next exhale, take your right hand and bring it to your hara, your belly, right below the navel. Keeping the left hand on your heart. And I want you to really feel your hand against your low belly. So you could even just gently press inward. Try to soften the low belly against the support of your right hand. Encourage the breath to deepen down into that earth center of the body. The left hand on the heart, the left side of the body being our more feminine side. Just encouraging the heart to stay open. And with the right hand on the belly, just encouraging us to trust all of the strength and courage and wisdom that's right here. Just one more breath. And just relax the hands down and just pause for a moment. And you might notice how the energy kind of collected in this central stream of energy. Just and there's a kind of a yin energy that pulls us down and in, nice and deep. So it's a wonderful practice. It's a practice that you could easily share with your children, right? Yeah, and you could really easily share it with your parents, or any elders that are in your life that, they sometimes, what I've found at least, especially I cared for my grandmother for several years, is that she wasn't as familiar with picking up on anxiety in her system, right? It was just like it kind of overtook her. Um, and I think just because these practices weren't available, to most people in that age, even my mom and dad and, you know, the boomers, the boomer generation, like, I think that they forgot, or, you know, my parents, at least my mom was like a big hippie when she was younger. And so probably had done stuff like this, but she's forgotten, you know? So these are the kind of practices that you could very easily show them how to do, and they'll feel something almost immediately, and it won't feel so kind of uh, overwhelming. So it's something really easy. Okay. And you could just do that for a minute. You could do it for up to 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. But even if you just do that practice for a minute when you feel like you need it a couple times a day, it'll really help calm things down. And now we're going to take the rest of the session today to work on the kidneys. So I'm just going to adjust a little bit here and sit up a little higher so you can see what I'm doing. Actually, I'm going to turn this way. So awkward teaching this way, by the way. So hopefully it's not as awkward for you guys to watch. Okay, so I'm going to encourage you now to take your hands to your the back of your ribs. Okay, so just imagine just holding the back of your ribs and really kind of feeling down into the bottom of the back of the ribs. So what you'll feel at the bottom of the rib cage in the back body, if you drop just below where the ribs end, there's almost like a tenderness there. So just feel in, okay? So you can see I'm kind of just feeling with 4 fingers into the kidney space. And now I'm gonna make a little fist, so with my hand, and I'm gonna take the fist back into the kidney space, and I'm just going to do a rotation. So I'm just massaging into the kidney space, okay? So you can imagine these swirly like figure 8s massaging into the kidney space, okay? And we're just gonna stay here and massage the kidneys kind of firmly. So you wanna really get in there, and it might actually feel uncomfortable at first because that space is generally tender. So if that's what you're feeling right now, that's normal. All right, so see if you could just go into a quiet space and you could just speed up that spiraling. And now go in the opposite direction. And that might feel awkward at first, but just trust that you're doing it right. And just massaging the kidneys, massaging the kidneys. Now go back to that first rotation. So we're going to do this 2 more times. Energy moves in spirals in your system, in the body, in the subtle energy body of the system. Okay, now go in the opposite direction. And you might be even getting sore in your arms. I'm feeling it in my forearms. And one more time, go back to that opposite spiral, and then finish with the other way, and then just relax. So just bring the hands down, sit up nice and tall, close your eyes, and notice that vibration of energy moving through you right now. Kidney chi is very powerful in the system. And just stay there. I'm going to just turn on my pillow here, but you could just stay right where you're at and breathe and just listen. The kidneys are very affected by stress. So it is the organ in the body, the yin organ in the body, that's most susceptible to being depleted when we're under chronic states of stress. And whenever we feel like we're burning the candles at both ends, it's a call to attend to the kidneys specifically. So the kidneys are the yin organ that are related to the yang organ of the urinary bladder meridian. So urinary bladder and the kidneys kind of work hand in hand. Very connected to our emotional health, mental well-being. The kidneys house our essence energy. In Chinese medicine, that's called Jing. So whenever we're feeling disconnected from who we are, like we're just not feeling like ourselves, and we say these things, I hear it all the time. I'm just not feeling like myself. I'm not sure what's going on. That's another call to attend to the kidneys. So how do we do that? How do we stimulate energy into that space? Well, that practice in particular is very supportive. And I'm going to do another practice with you now. Okay. So you're in a nice relaxed state. I'd like you to sit up nice and tall. Close your eyes. And you're probably still noticing some lingering sensation or vibrational quality in the kidney space, that space that we just massaged out. So I'd like you to softly land your attention right there in your body. And if you need more, like if you're just not feeling like you can connect to that space, you could go back and just massage again into the kidneys. Nice and slow. Doesn't have to be strong or fast like we were doing. Just to bring your attention back into that space. And once you feel reconnected, you could rest your hands down. And now I want you to visualize the brightest, most blue sky, a blue summer, open sky. Just imagine this cloudless, boundless, spacious blue sky. And with your next inhale, imagine that color, that blue sky color, coming in through the nose in the conduit of the breath. Imagine that blue color dropping down to the hara, to that belly space below the navel, mingling with our chi body in the space of the hara. And on the exhale, imagine the color blue infusing the kidneys with fresh energy as the exhale releases from the body, but the blue stays. It's just nurturing the kidneys. So the next breath in is pulling that color blue down from the heavens, down into the hara. The exhale directs the kidney chi color, that blue color, into the kidneys as the exhale comes out of the body. And one more time together, the inhale pulling that blue color down into the pit of the belly, where it mingles with our essence chi down in the hara. The exhale directing that blue color into the kidneys as we breathe out. So we're holding on to that visualization of that color blue. That's very balancing and correcting to the kidney chi, nurturing the system. And let's do 3 of these now on your own. Just really working with the breath, working with the visualization, working with this color blue coming in from the heavens, down into the belly, mingling with our chi body inside, and then shooting up to the kidneys on the exhale as the breath leaves. 2 more. And now just relaxing that method, relaxing the breath, softening into the body, into the foundation. Returning to a natural breath. Again, that method has dissolved. And just kind of noticing how things are inside right now. And just open your eyes and come back. Okay, how's everybody doing? Very good. Okay, I don't see any of you. So just gonna look around for a second. What you might notice is a bit of a refresh in the system from that practice. Okay, so really refreshes the system. Yeah. You could practice that on your own. Those visualizations are really supportive and very helpful, and very powerful. And the more you practice the visualizations, the easier they are to like kind of catch, right? So at first it might feel like you're pretending, but even if you feel that way, even if you feel like I'm pretending, I'm making this up, it's still working. Okay, so that's part of it. You just have to trust, right? Because at some point when you come to the practice, you'll be like, oh, I'm not pretending, I really felt that. Okay, so every time we're introduced to these new practices, and there's quite a bit here, right? There's quite a bit we're working with right here. And so I would encourage you also not to feel overwhelmed by how much we're offering. Okay, if you just do one of these practices, that's wonderful, and it's a way in. And what I always encourage students to do is really trust that any practices that you were exposed to today that felt really supportive, just practice those for a while. And you don't have to add in all these extra fancy like layers. All right, we could just do the same practices every day for a long time until we feel really confident in what we're doing, and then try something new. Okay, so the last thing, awesome, yeah, I'm getting some good feedback. The last thing I wanted to show you before I open this up for questions, and actually what I'm going to encourage you to do is I'm going to show you what to do. I'm going to open it up for questions. And then this is the last thing we're going to do together before we close for the day, because it'll just leave you feeling really calm. Okay. So again, I don't have the best setup here. I don't know if I told another group this, but my house is under construction. We're renovating, and it's really bad time for that. So anyway, I don't think I'll ever renovate again. So what we're gonna do here today is a shape called Sphinx pose. And this is probably the most frequent yin yoga shape that I do in any practice. So if I only have time for 1 or 2 practices, it's Sphinx pose and butterfly. And wait, I'm not sure if I did the butterfly pose with you guys. No, I didn't. We did reclined spinal twist. So since I mentioned it, I'll also show you how to do that. But if I only have 10 minutes to practice, this is what my practice looks like, okay? So really simple. I think we sometimes with just like, you know, us going, having only been, if you're only exposed to yoga in a studio setting, sometimes we think of the practice as being like this really long drawn out sequence that's really choreographed and all flows together. And trust me, I love doing that. So I really miss going to the studio and being with community and practicing together and breathing together. But yoga is really meant to be practiced traditionally, at least this way, right? Where we're just, you know, noticing what we need to work on, kind of having a plan, and then tucking it into our days as we need it. All right. So Sphinx pose looks like this. So I'm gonna bend my knees here, and I'm just on my elbows and forearms. So I don't know if you guys could see me all the way, but what's important here is that my elbows and forearms are bent in a 90-degree angle. I'm pushing the elbows just gently forward so that there's a little bit of an angle between the elbow and the shoulder, okay? We don't want the elbows to splay out too wide, so keeping them stacked under the shoulder and lifted through the chest. What you want to watch out for with Sphinx pose is that you don't feel a sharp, pinchy sensation in the low back. So if you're feeling that, and you don't have to have the knees bent. The knees bent will increase the intensity of the shape. So if you're frequent yin yoga practitioner, if you've done this before and you're looking for a little bit of an increase in movement of qi, especially targeting the UB line, the urinary bladder line, and into the kidneys, you could practice this right against the wall. And you could bring your knees against the wall, right? And you could tuck your elbows in, and then you're just getting a little bit more. But if you're getting a pinchy sensation there, you really want to extend the legs and open the legs up a little wider, because it'll reduce that, that intensity in the low back, which is always important. We don't want you to feel like you're doing anything risky in yin yoga, okay? So Sphinx pose, you can hold for 3 to 5 minutes. You remember, and I think this is important to emphasize, there's really no point in holding a yin yoga shape for more than 10 minutes if you're a beginner. If you do this quite often, never longer than 15 minutes, right? So I find that the most potent, for me at least, and this is really personal, so you have to figure out what your time is, but my most potent time is somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes. 10 minutes sometimes feels risky though, so that 8-minute kind of space is always good for me personally. For beginners though, I want to emphasize, just start with 3 minutes, because that's a really nice, that's enough time for the energy to really drop deep into the connective tissue and create some space there. And that's really what we're looking for from a physical perspective. Okay, so because I talked about butterfly, I'm just going to show you what that looks like. And we're just bringing the feet together and opening up into more of a diamond shape, and then lifting and lengthening through the sternum, coming forward into a space that feels interesting but not overwhelming to the system, and then simply softening down and relaxing. And you could just bring something under your forehead if you need it. You don't want to strain the back of the neck. This is a great one because it really gets into all of the largest lower meridian lines and stimulates a lot of energy into the yin organ, the yin organs of the lower meridians. So the liver, the spleen, and the kidneys kind of reside in that space. And then in the back body, we're stimulating energy along the spine, which targets the urinary bladder and is really supportive to the kidneys. So every time we're practicing these long, deep, quiet holds, there's always a physical, mental, emotional, and energetic benefit to the holds, okay? So physically, we're opening up space in the connective tissue, which tends to hold on to tension and create adhesions there. And then sometimes the muscles will get involved because, of course, there's connective tissues layered between all of the muscle fibers, all right? So when we're getting deep down into that connective tissue, it allows any adhesions to kind of start opening up. This is also really good for stimulating rebuilding of fluids, especially in the joints. We're really targeting between the navel and the knees in yin yoga. So this is especially wonderful for the knees and your hips and the low back. Just kind of releasing any tension there and stimulating synovial fluid, the production of synovial fluid and different elastin and I'm not remembering the other word I'm looking for right now, collagen in that space, okay? So, and that's all good, right? We want a lot of collagen, especially as we're getting older. We notice that we lose it. So essentially we dry up as we get older, and this stimulates this movement of fluid deep in the joint spaces, all right? Where, by the way, in Chinese medicine, that's where they, believe that all disease manifests from, degeneration in the joints. So we're just really targeting there. Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about the mental and emotional benefits, and we'll be working on more of a focus in working with some of these feelings that are coming up, at least working with them in the physical body. But over the next couple weeks, we'll be digging into feelings and emotions and what to do with all of that once we recognize what's coming up. So the emphasis for the next 3 weeks will be on just looking and acknowledging. And then I'm so excited to announce that my teacher, one of my primary teachers, Ty Powers, will be joining us on Friday, April 24th. And he will be talking about then a method called internal family systems, which is a Western psychology method that teaches us what to do with the emotions once we have kind of uprooted them, right? So now we know what we're dealing with, we understand the muck we're in, and now what? And that's where IFS is really, really helpful. So I'm excited about that, and that will definitely mark your calendars. It's definitely going to be something that you'll want to attend live so that you can experience Ty and his wisdom and his generous heart. So I would like to open this up for questions to see what questions you might have on anything we talked about, and then we'll end in practice today. Okay. So I'm going to challenge each of you to ask one question. How's that?
Okay, I got a question.
Okay.
Not really a question, but can you expand a little bit on when you said fake it or make believe that you're feeling something when you're not, and
Right.
what that means?
Yeah, so especially with visualization practices, right? Part of it is just imagining, right? And as adults especially, we lose some of that creative energy if we're not kind of training it up. So you may, instead of like visualizations really are imaginings. And so when adults are introduced to those practices, they often feel like, well, I just made that up. I just imagined it. Well, that's kind of the point, right? But we could train it up. And the more we do that, the more authentic it will feel and the less like fraudulent. Like, I think that especially in Western cultures, we tend to feel like we're not equipped, right? And that's just not true. We're born with that. We're born with imaginings and creativity and this ability to really manifest kind of an altered state with the visualization practices. So good question. Thanks. Anybody else? Can I challenge you for just 2 more questions? Maybe not all of you, because then we won't have time to get to all of them. Okay. All right.
Are there any other props you would recommend for anybody who feels any kind of discomfort in either of these poses?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question, Rach. I appreciate it. Rachel's one of our teachers. So is Bjarni, by the way. So I'm glad that they both jumped in. So I have a bolster here. This is a Manduka bolster. I've had it for a while. But if you don't have a bolster, you could just pull. What I like to tell people is not to use a pillow from your bed because they're generally too soft and they don't offer the support you need for yoga practice. But usually a couch pillow will do. So you could just grab a couch pillow, usually from the back of the couch if you could do that, but even just a throw pillow from the couch is usually better. And if you're if you're in Sphinx pose, you could place, and I'm not going to lay it down because you won't see it, but you could kind of place that bolster right underneath your like your sternum, right? And then just bring your elbows down so it would kind of look like that. And it'll just give you enough support and reduce the lumbar curve in the spine so it doesn't feel so intense. Additionally, a lot of people are really sensitive in their knees and ankles. So I actually do a lot of these practices right on my bed. And it's totally fine. I am really sensitive in my ankles. So whenever I'm on like the hard floor, sometimes those longer holds feel, just excruciatingly painful because I'm bony in my ankles. So just practicing it on the bed, it's okay to feel that comfort. You're still going to feel the shape. You're still going to have the benefits, physically, energetically happening in that hold. So good question. As far as the butterfly shape, just resting the bolster, right into your belly, just resting it, so that you have that extra support. For some of you, especially if you've had any low back injuries, you don't even have to, you don't have to fold forward. Sometimes forward folding is even harder on the low back. So if you just want to recline back off onto the bolster, even against the wall, like if you don't want to recline all the way back, you could just take the bolster behind you and just like recline back into it, right? And years of yoga have make your body different. So, but for some of you that are new to yoga, that might be a big stretch for you. You might feel a lot of pulling in the connective tissue. And so remember, you want to feel something, but you don't want to push your body into a space where you're feeling pain, right? So that would do the opposite to the body. It would be the opposite to the system. Okay. And then I have one more question by chat, and it says, any foods you recommend supportive to this time of crisis, especially for kidney support? That's a good question. I have to ask, I have a really good friend who's a yin yoga teacher and a Chinese medicine doctor. And I will reach out to Adele and find out, because that's kind of out of my wheelhouse and I haven't read about it recently. So what I know for sure, when when you are referring to the urinary bladder meridian, fluids, clear fluids and warm, you know, not cold, not necessarily hot, but just tempered, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, just, you know, kind of neutral fluids are really good for the system, and we want to make sure that we're drinking a lot of fluids. And I've been just trying to eat a lot of like potatoes and, you know, earthy, like sweet potatoes, white potatoes, carrots, brothy root vegetable soups, that sort of thing, because that's just really going to ground you. But I'm sure that there's a ton of suggestions that Adele would recommend, and maybe we could even get her on one of these calls. So let me reach out to her, and I'll place that in the portal, or I'll have some suggestions for you next week. So I have one more question. I'm a competitive person, and I tend to be competitive within myself during yoga, wanting to get into the deepest position even if my body is not agreeing with me. What recommendations do you have for someone like that to slow down and get away from being competitive and more meditative? Such a good question. Well, welcome to the club. You know, I would say that's exactly me, how I would describe myself, especially like when I first got into yoga. So I practiced Ashtanga yoga, which is a very disciplined, like very competitive, very masculine, fast moving practice where you're always pushing. And I think many of us tend to come, especially in our Western culture, come to yoga with this striving intention, and we want to feel like we could win it, you know, or be the best at it. And it just takes practice. You know, it's these types of practices will be extremely helpful. I would absolutely say my recommendation for you specifically is that do the yin yoga practices and do the holds 3 to 5 minutes. If you really feel like you need to do that 5 minutes, go ahead. What I trust completely is that the yin yoga will work within you, and it will slow you down completely. And that was my way in. So the yin yoga, I give credit for completely opening me to the more contemplative, meditative practices, which really make up most of my time in practice now. But it took about 13 years for that to happen. So just be kind to yourself, because it may take a while. I would say that a yin yoga sequence would probably be best for you, because you're really going to be challenged by the yin yoga practice. It's not restorative yoga. I do recommend restorative yoga, and we'll definitely give you some restorative practices for, you know, during this, during our time together. But yin yoga can be quite challenging. Those long holds could be quite challenging. So I think you'll find that competitive edge will be tempered through a sequence of yin yoga. And so just doing everything that we've taught you so far, start out in Sphinx pose, do butterfly pose for 5 minutes, and then do your reclined spinal twist, both sides, for 5 minutes. And that's a 20-minute practice. Okay, so just start there, and just be kind to yourself if you feel that, you know, frustration coming up. It's okay. All right, good question. All right, guys, so our time together has ended. I would like each of you to turn off your cameras and set your timers for 5 minutes and give yourself that time in Sphinx pose. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much. I appreciate you. I will see you tomorrow with Christine and our special guest, Andrea. You guys are going to love her. And I will see you next Tuesday as well. Okay? Enjoy. Have a good day.